Can Sony save Bungie from themselves? So, here we are again with another topic and another video. Another conversation about the issues that exist within the world that we love. So, what am I covering this time? Can Sony save Bungie from themselves? I know, there are going to be a lot of people who claim that Bungie is too far gone to be saved, that Sony, with its own set of issues, which of course I will be covering in a later video, seems a poor choice to help anyone do anything, especially after the likes of Concord and numerous cancellations across the board. Even with Bungie looking dead in the street, appearing as if no single thing could possibly save it, will Sony just drive on by, allowing Bungie to fade into obscurity? Will they allow it to fall into the bin of long-forgotten studios, the homes of names that once reigned supreme but now barely register a thought? Or will Sony stop, pull over, and realize that Bungie is in dire need of help, structure, and direction, thereby swooping in and saving Bungie from their own machinations, their own inept decisions? So, let's talk about it. The Bungie. When Bungie first truly burst onto the scene, when Bungie first truly stepped out and placed its foot hard on the ground, leaving its imprint on gaming, it did so with a little-known franchise called Halo. This groundbreaking and revolutionary game did something for console gaming that had truly not been done before. It made FPS games a mainstream event. It took them from the walls of our offices and screens of our PCs, dropping them firmly into our living room and onto couches. We spent hours and hours playing, with friends, with family, against friends and family. Bungie had arrived. They had declared, "We stand by Wolfenstein, Doom, and Half-Life. We are a formidable FPS, and we demand your attention." Through multiple iterations, through different campaigns and storylines, Halo propelled itself to the top of the FPS world. No matter what they did, it sold, and it impressed. Bungie reigned supreme as one of the top FPS developers, one of the companies that had reached the plateau of they could do no wrong in the gamers' eyes. No game they sold would be doubted, no sale rejected. Their products always delivered. Eventually, Bungie would part ways with Microsoft and move out into the river of the gaming industry on its own, staking its moment, proclaiming loudly with their banners of achievements fluttering behind them, Destiny was coming. When Destiny arrived, we were in awe, we were in shock. We saw something so new and so epic that it defied the senses. We were enthralled in the beta, wanting to chase that wizard to the moon, wanting to let our little Dinklebot guide the way. We jumped headfirst into this incredible universe that Bungie had created, lost and in awe as we stared into the heavens of the skyboxes, jumped the chasm of new worlds, and smote down gods and demons wherever we went. Destiny had arrived, and it was a smash hit. Yet the rumors and info started to leak. The news of cut content, complete resets, changing storylines and lore, massive shifts in design. These rumors, this news, floated to the surface, evident for all to see. There it was before us, the first hint of the failures to come. If only we knew then, if only we saw the smoke for what it was, the first hint that it wasn't the game burning behind Bungie. It wasn't the story, it wasn't the lore. It was the banners of their accomplishments. It was their credibility, their achievements, tarnished and faltering before us. Yet somehow, someway, the smoke blew clear. The fires dimmed to embers and slowly faded with time. Destiny 1 was saved and fixed. We received the Taken King, and the world was on fire again. The Guardians racing headlong into the Dreadnought, flaming hammers flying, void quivers full, and the lightning crawling across the floor. Destiny was badass again. We tore through the continent raids. We absorbed and devoured every bit, every morsel, every single drop they allowed us. Bungie rode into Rise of Iron on a high note and left D1 there, at its moment of completion, at its final note. D1 was an epic game full of content and lore, full of all the things that you would desire, and most importantly, full of fun. The final weeks of D1 were insane. Mayhem and PvE reigned wherever we went. Supers upon supers, the sounds of the casts heard like echoes of thunder across the sky on the stormiest nights. We were ready, prepped, and desperate for Destiny 2. Duhhhstiny 2. When Destiny 2 dropped, we should have been more aware of what this meant. We should have done better to read the signs of what was before us. Destiny 2 was a fundamental shift, a massive realignment of the game and its core. The plateau of the game shifting like continents to form something altogether new. We went from Pangea to the world as we know it today. When we logged in, Everything was different, from the design of the armor and supers to the vibe and the feel of the game. This was a warning, a scream for help, a boiling down of the game to chase a new audience that would bite, nibbling on the bait, but would be gone long before the hook could be set. Bungie had decided to push away its player base and chase the casual audience. They had cast off the hardcore and the faithful, kicking them from their seats at the bar, making way for an audience that showed, but left long before the meal could be served. Destiny 2 had changed, and not for the good. As the curse arrived, as the war mines fell, we stood back in the shock at the state of this game. We stood back in shock at this farce, this lie that we had been sold, wondering what happened to Destiny 1 in the game they made. Soon we were given Forsaken. The game began to heal. Players returned, and once again, glory and battles filled the air in Destiny. The sounds of war, of gunfire, of taken bosses and raid monsters dying, Riven spinning her last lie. The glory was back and we beheld it. Yet something was brewing. Something was faltering. Bungie, retaining its ownership of the Destiny IP, left Activision and went out on its own. Millions of fists shot into the air, screaming in joy as if we had just conquered our foe and smote them down before us. Bungie was free of its corporate masters, the ones surely responsible for their change, surely responsible for the state of this game, surely responsible for the pain that we, their player base, their guardians, had endured. We proceeded down this new path, wondering what tomorrow would bring, wondering how our game would change as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Then, the winds of change blew, the banner of ownership had shifted, a new suitor had shown. Sony's arrival was coming. We all gleefully bought Shadowkeep, journeyed beyond the light, and went to seek the Witch Queen. We had faltered along the way, minor missteps in our path as we looked back over our past. But ahead of us, the end was in sight. Like a marathon runner taking the last turn and spotting the checkered flag, we strode forward with devotion and fervor, knowing the end to this epic journey was before us. Yet suddenly, like a tire blowing on the final stretch, light fail arrived. Our worries, our doubts, flooded back as we played something so lacking in quality and content that we almost stumbled and lost our way. Yet we fought, we stood, and we became our final shape, and we crossed that finish line, our hands shooting triumphantly into the air as the journey was over. We had done it. We had beaten the darkness and held it back. 10 years of effort. It was over. I should tell you, Guardians, I've only felt that way one other time in my life. When I walked out of the theater after Endgame, the journey was over. The next year was uneventful, small seeds of future stories being planted, small activities to keep us busy. Yet Guardians, you know what came next. You know what arrived. I have discussed it. We have talked about it in the comments. You have played it. I find no point in rehashing the topics of old. I find no point in us going back over what frustrates us so. But I must, for our sake, for the point, for the information to matter, for context. Bungie has forever been lost with the creation of Destiny. The game, from its beginnings to its current form, is that of a journey on a storming sea, going from one direction to another, heaving to and fro. We have been back and forth across this deck we call a game as Bungie desperately tries to seek an identity, and then, when it finds one, quickly casting it aside for another, like an actor changing between acts. The game was gutted, the content was robbed of its value, and the time was replaced with work. We were tossed to the side, shown to our corner, and given our coloring book while they worked away on other things. The Portal is a glaring example, a sign slammed into the ground, screaming at its player base and all who would listen. We are lost, and we do not know our direction. Someone, anyone, please bring us a mirror so we might see who we are, for we are tired and lost, for we have been running a marathon. The race no one wants to run. Marathon was and is a glaring example of the inept leadership of Bungie. If the story holds true, if there is fact to it, it is said that they, the Bungie leadership, decided on creating an extraction shooter while playing one after work. Now, Guardians. I don't know if this isn't a glowing sign of S-tier leadership, but I sure think it is. So a company that has made PvE campaigns, a company that runs a massive MMO-light FPS, wants to suddenly go pure PvP extraction shooter. Insert your favorite confused meme, Guardians, because I want this one to hit home. I want you to visualize it. Now, The thing that is really most frustrating about this is not just Marathon and its plethora of failures, its laundry list of sins, its utter abysmal player tests. It's the fact that this is the supposed good game, the one that Bungie decided to keep working on. Even though it had been reported by numerous streamers and sites that other games, yes, other games by Bungie, other games in development at Bungie, tested better than Marathon. Matter was cancelled. Gummy Bears, the one that actually tested extremely well, that was spun off into a new company under Sony Studios. Yet Marathon was kept. The worst testing game out of all of them. Once again, Guardians, confused meme. Visualize it. Marathon is a bland and boring extraction shooter, a game that seems more designed to allow devs to chat and take coffee breaks instead of putting in work and effort. Now, I will state very clearly, I am not a game designer. My past lies in video and film production. I understand well what it takes to make large-scale events run, but I have never worked on a game. So this is not fact, this is opinion. Yet consider this. If Marathon was a hit, if it was all we had ever dreamed from an extraction shooter, it would allow Bungie to make a top-tier game with the most minimal amount of effort in comparison to a game like Destiny. Gone would be creating massive patrol spaces and content to fill it. Gone would be creating raids and dungeons and mechanics to run them. Gone would be creating non-stop seasonal content to push the players to keep them engaged. Instead, they would have to work to create one or two maps and minor updates, new armor packs and cosmetics, base models, guns, and designs. The amount of effort required to maintain Marathon is a company's dream, especially if you've been working on Destiny for a decade. But this is just the base perception of this game. If we flip the page to the sins, to the failures, we see a game that is plagiarized and stolen, a game that is robbed from a small artist and never gave credit or payment, something that Bungie is well known for doing now. Whether stealing weapons designs or an artist's drawings for a cutscene, if Bungie likes what you do, they just take it. They don't even feel the need to beg and offer to the creator. They assume, like a greedy robber baron, that this is theirs for them to plunder and rob. And now, Marathon ripped the bandage off the festering wound that is Bungie. It ripped the band-aid off and showed the world the hideousness of their sins, bringing the lights of the eyes of the world to its disaster. We watched as Bungie had layoffs after layoffs, as the dedicated staff who crafted and created the worlds we loved were tossed overboard, all so Pete Parsons could afford to buy another car for his collection. We watched as the games that could have been were canceled so Bungie could pour its resources into a game no one asked for and no one wants. And this bit right here, this part leaves me to question. When Sony acquired Bungie, they did so not just for Destiny, but for the help with their live service bid. With Bungie's team in tow, they toured numerous live service games and gave verdicts that led to the end of much sought-after adventures. The Last of Us Factions, Twisted Metal, Spider-Man Co-op. These were the games Bungie claimed were not viable for the long term. This is known information. But consider this. Did Bungie give bad advice out of fear that if Sony's other studios delivered on these titles, they would be expected to as well? No missteps allowed then? No more faltering DLCs? No more one step forward, two step back? Some say Bungie wanted to be a big boy. They wanted to pull their chair to the table of Activision and Blizzard and Bethesda. They wanted to be a big boy studio and have multiple games in production. Yet how can you sit at the table? How can you claim to be a big boy when the weight of what you carry won't allow you to step up off the ground? When Destiny is in a constant loop of one step forward, two steps back. When your game, your new gym, the one you are so enthralled with, has already had its core rebooted? When Christopher Barrett is replaced with Joe Ziegler, how can you be a big boy, pretending to be something that you're not when you cannot even balance your own affairs? Marathon is the example. It is the sign. The moment that shows that the creators of Destiny have long since burned their goodwill to the ground. That the banners that used to flow so long and beautifully behind them, their accomplishments hanging in the wind, have long since been tattered and broken down over time, leaving nothing but a stick left to give an idea of what came before. Bungie is no longer that company. They are no longer the company that can be trusted. When it steals from its player base, when it takes advantage of its players' goodwill and trust, when it puts the value of its leadership over the value of its players and its own people, the problem with Bungie becomes glaringly evident. The leadership must go. The board must be purged. It's time for change. It's time for Sony to step in and protect its investment before it's too late. So you're saying there's a chance? Sony for 5 generations has been a powerhouse in gaming. They boast more exclusive Game of the Year content than any other company in the market. Say what you will about them, but Sony titles have defined generations and eras of gaming. From Twisted Metal to God of War, The Last of Us to Infamous, Sony has shown a passion for delivering top-tier games consistently. Yes, this generation has been a major letdown. Sony has gone full bore under the failed leadership of Jim Ryan to chase the live service dollar. They've gone out of their way to put many of their studios onto projects that have been canceled or outright failed, like Concord. Imagine how many games we could have had Sony pursued its goal of single-player and basic multiplayer-style games, of non-live service games. Yet the era of Jim Ryan has come and gone, passed into the shadows like many before him. I do miss the days of Sean Layden and Andrew House, when PS stood as the de facto pillar of dominance in gaming. Yeah, that was a different era. Yes, PS has faltered. But there is a difference. Sony has made changes. Jim Ryan retired, or so they say. I personally feel this was more of Sony ushering him out the door, seeing the failure of what was to come, seeing of how little live service would pay. Yet now under the leadership of Hiroki Totoki, we can already see a changing of the guard. We can already see a return to the hard, strict rules that once ruled Sony. And we can find this very evident when it comes to their communications in regards to Bungie. Sony CFO Lin Tao claimed that Bungie's independence was getting lighter, that they were integrating Bungie to become more of a PlayStation studio. This is the start of the transition. Pete Parsons has stepped down, replaced by Justin Truman, former Chief Development Officer at Bungie. We are seeing the start of the changing of the guard. We are seeing the start of a new life in this company. Sony has stated that Bungie becoming a PS studio is an ongoing process, that the direction is to become a part of PlayStation Studios. So what does that mean? What exactly does being a part of PlayStation Studios mean? Wasn't Bungie already owned by Sony? Yes, they were. But Bungie had full control of its spaces and places in the gaming universe. It had a say in what games it made and how it operated. But this, as we all know now, was a mistake. This was like giving a child a credit card and letting them loose in a toy store. Zero impulse control. It's not their money. With Bungie becoming a Sony studio, they will now be held accountable, and their decisions will be approved. Each time they want to make a new game, make a major decision, or change a game's direction, Sony will approve or deny. What would I do? Now, my decision here would be based more on the Bungie side, not on the side of corporate suits and boardrooms, of rooms reeking with the smell of elitism money. My decision would be simple. Number 1, clean up and refresh Marathon, bringing it to the point of release in the standard Sony expects. At this point, you're $400 million in the hole. It's time to go big or go home. You need some return on investment. And as I stated, maintaining the game would be a tenth of Destiny's time and budget. 2, Destiny 2, after the current year of content, needs to bring a way to push the story of the 9 into the future by several years. The following year could be called something along the lines of the celebration of life, the year of victory, etc., Guardian. 3, Destiny 2 is put into hibernation mode. Bungie comes out and declares that the following year's content will be lighter due to Destiny 3 being in prime development. 4, hire and invest time and money into the development of Destiny 3, pouring the majority of the studio's resources into the game. 5, lead with a rock-solid plan that lays out an 8-year game from the start. Know the direction you're going and how you're going to get there. 6, take and implement changes into the core of Destiny, taking into account the things that players loved and cherished about the first 2 games and building around them. 7, and this one, being 7, Bungie's favorite number, is the most important. Make fun the biggest priority, not time played. When people have fun, they'll play. Shocking, I know, right? So there it is, Guardians. There are my beliefs on if Sony can save Bungie from itself. I've laid out several of my beliefs and honestly could go much further into detail, but this video would have been close to an hour to an hour and a half. I would like to keep my content between 10 to 30 minutes. This allows you all to tune in and then move on to more important things in life, like playing games, spending time with family and loved ones, or watching an awesome movie. Solution and conclusion. Now I know that many were pissed and even terrified when Sony purchased Bungie. I personally was neither. I had been claiming this was a need by Sony for a long time. Sony has been the king of third-person narrative-driven games for generations now. They have delivered game of the year after game of the year with their cinematic masterpieces. But one thing Sony has never had, truly, was an FPS studio. Yes, there was Killzone, and yes, there was Resistance, but Guerrilla makes Horizon now, and Insomniac makes Marvel games and Ratchet & Clank. Sony needed an FPS studio, so they got Bungie. Now consider this to those of you who are worried and fearful. As someone who's owned every PS console, Sony has always put an effort into ensuring that their games are award contenders. They want to win awards every time they release a game, or at least be competing for them. I personally find this to be an exceptional approach. Go big or go home. Make great games that compete, that win. When studios follow that mindset, we, the players, win. We, the gamers, win. We get a proper return on our investment of gaming and time. We get a top-tier product that we enjoy, and with the cost of gaming, that's an important factor for most. Sony taking over Bungie is nothing but a net positive. They see Destiny as lightning in a bottle, something to be kept close and tended to. They feel that the game needs to be nurtured and taken care of, that the monetization strategy is too confusing and costly, and that Sony is aware of their player base's opinion on the cost of microtransactions. As I have covered before, Bungie's microtransaction costs are beyond stupid. So is there any hope? Is there any light that I can shine to make you smile and know our game will improve? Look to Sony's coming on the first light of the 5th day, as Bungie lays deep within Helm's Deep, fighting off the hordes of bad decisions and poor designs they have made. Sony will ride down that hill and bring a victory to the game that we love. Why? Because unlike all the failures that Sony has canceled this generation, the Concords, the Twisted Metals, the Last of Us factions, the God of Wars, the Spider-Mans, Destiny makes money. Destiny makes lots of money. Sony knows this. Sony has the framework. Sony has the system established. Sony just needs to right the ship. And they do that by dissolving the board and taking full control of Bungie, bringing them under the Sony Studio banner. Now, I am not like some of the Sony fans who call for full exclusivity. I find that appalling on live service games when numbers are important. I'm all for live service and multiplayer games being multi-platform releases. With that said, I think Sony should keep Bungie a multi-platform developer for all of its live service and multiplayer games. But, and yes, there is a big but there, I also think that Sony should foster the multi-game format with Bungie and hand them Killzone or Resistance. Personally, I think Killzone would be the better of the two options, as it is a world ripe with possibilities and political subterfuge. But I also think Resistance would be a hit with Bungie at the wheel. With all that said, I appreciate your time. A like and sub would help. Once again, thank you to all for viewing this video and making it this far. I am truly grateful for your time. So leave a comment, let me know what you agreed with, and if you didn't, let me hear your opinion in the comments below. So, carry on, Guardians, even if it is to other games and worlds while we wait for this one to be fixed. Hopefully, we'll still end up back here together. Again, fighting the monsters of the universe, hoping that Sony had Bob the Builder this game and we're back to enjoying it again.